Recognize that sound? It's the old-time school bell that called your great-grandmothers and great-grandfathers into the schoolroom 100 years ago. Noisy thing, wasn't it? And it brought the kids thundering in from all parts of the schoolyard. That confusion didn't last long, I can tell you, when there was a teacher there with a birch rod handy. Here's another sound. You all know that sound. Probably heard it this morning, and then you filed quietly and sedately into your classrooms. In a way, those two sounds represent 100 years of elementary schooling in Ontario, but there is a lot more difference than just the sound of bells.
Essex, Kent, Elgin, Norfolk, Haldimand, Welland, Lincoln, Wentworth, Halton, Peel, York, Ontario.
The counties of southern Ontario. Chances are your grandfather can still recite them. Certainly your great-granddad could, because every child who went to school 100 years ago had to memorize them, or else.
Ow!
Schoolwork was mostly memorizing in those days, the idea being to stuff as much information as possible into the youngster's head while you had him in school, because you wouldn't have him there very long. And what of the schools of the future? No grades, no exams, no classrooms, no teachers, no school bells at all? Perhaps. Who knows? We can only guess. So let's do some guessing and compare the old school with that of the future. First, we'll visit a school of 100 years ago, then a school of 100 years from now. Let's get into our time machine and go back 100 years. Are you ready? The year 1867. There's our schoolhouse sitting in a field surrounded by elms and maples. It's November 22nd, 1867. The ground is covered with snow. Down the hill from the school, the pond is new frozen, ready for the first shinny game of the season. And there are the children yelling and arguing and shouting and laughing and pushing and heaving snowballs. We'll come back to them later. The schoolhouse. It's in the country because most Canadians lived on farms 100 years ago. The building is new and made of gray limestone. This is a small school, one room with 3 high, narrow windows on each side. There's the bell. The children are running. Let's go inside with them and do a little eavesdropping. Inside, the school is pretty bare. The small windows don't let in much light, and there is no electricity, of course. A big wood-burning box stove stands at the back of the room with the stovepipes running high over the children's heads to the chimney at the front. But it's still chilly in the room. There's the teacher's desk, up on a small platform in front, and a small blackboard behind it. And there's a map of Canada on the wall, the only map. Looks different somehow. Oh yes, there are no prairie provinces, just the maritime provinces, Quebec and Ontario, and sitting off away by itself, British Columbia, waiting for the railroad to make it part of Canada. And the rest, Northwest Territories and Rupert's Land. Opening exercises are over, and the day's lessons are about to begin.
All right, class, take your seats. Wilfred, what seems to be the trouble?
Teacher, this seat is just plain too small for my legs.
You mean your legs are too long for the seat?
Same thing, teacher. I guess I grew some since last spring.
I guess you did. Well, for the time being, you can sit at the table at the back. Then I'll see about getting a bigger desk for you.
Yes, ma'am.
It's no wonder Wilfred's too big for his seat. He's over 6 feet tall. You see, he's 18 years old and still in grade 8. Oh, he's not stupid. It's just that he only comes to school in the winter term. The rest of the time, he's home helping on the farm. Over on the other side of the room are the little tykes, half the size of Wilfred and less than half his age. This is their first year in school. All 8 grades are in this one room. and just one teacher. Uh-oh, the day's work is beginning.
Now, boys and girls, I wonder how many of you remember to bring an item of interest for our current events discussion. Good. It's most important to know what's going on in the world, especially in these modern times of great change and scientific advancement, and in Canada's first year as a nation. Well, now, Jean, what have you got for us?
My father brought home a copy of the Orangeville Sun last night. It's just out, and I clipped this out.
Read it, please.
Yes, Miss Evans. The Honourable John Ross, Member of Parliament for Huntington, has been appointed Minister of Finance for Ontario in place of the Honourable A.T. Galt resigned.
Yes, that's an important bit of news. Now, who can tell me the name of the Premier of Ontario?
Miss.
Miss,
Please. Now, the first Premier of Ontario. Harry?
MacDonald. What are you laughing at? I'm right.
Please, teacher. MacDonald is the Prime Minister of Canada.
Ontario, my dad said so.
Canada!
Ontario!
Canada!
Stop it, please. As a matter of fact, you are both right. Sir John A. MacDonald is the Prime Minister of Canada, and the Honourable John Sandfield MacDonald is the first Prime Minister of Ontario.
Not very considerate of them to both have the same name.
Yes, it does rather complicate things, but at least you have only one last name to remember. Sir John A. MacDonald, Prime Minister of Canada. Honourable John S. MacDonald, Premier of Ontario. And they are no relation. Now, any other news this week?
Yes,
Please. Yes, Harry?
I read that Mr. Gladstone of England is visiting Ireland to study the Irish question on Irish soil. It said he went incognito. What does that mean?
Does anyone know what incognito means?
It means so the Irish wouldn't shoot him.
What does the word incognito mean?
I know, it means the sky, sort of. Well, I mean, without telling everybody who he is.
Correct. And who can tell me who Mr. Gladstone is? No? Well, he is the leader of the Liberal Party in Britain. And he's in favour of giving the Irish people back their lands.
Hooray for him, I say.
Now, that'll do, Sean O'Sullivan. Now, an interesting consideration here is how this news from Britain gets into our papers so quickly.
By telegraph.
Oh, that's right, Margaret. By telegraph through the transatlantic cable which was laid last year. And now just think, boys and girls, what a wonderful advance in communication the telegraph is. Why, before the telegraph was invented, now just 20 years ago, the only way of communicating with a person was by talking to him, or by sending a message by horseback or stagecoach or ship. All of which took a long time. But now, a message can go across the ocean or across Canada in seconds. Now imagine that. Well, now, we must get down to work. All grades, take out the reading books, please. Quickly now, please. Oh, and quietly. That's better. Now, each grade will turn to the reading lesson we had last day and copy out all the new words on your slates. In your very best handwriting. Now, Senior Fourth, turn to page 33 of your readers. Wilfred, perhaps it will ease your legs if you stand up and read for us from the top of the page.
Me, ma'am?
Yes, you.
Well, all right.
Ouch!
Oh, sorry.
Begin, please.
Babylon. Secular history ascribes the origin of Babylon to...
What's the trouble, Wilfred?
I can't see very well, ma'am.
Oh, well, it is rather dark in here. Move over and stand by the window, then, please.
Yes, ma'am. Should I start over?
Yes?
Babylon. Secular history ascribes the origin of Babylon to...
Belus?
Yeah, Belus. The god of Baal.
That's Baal.
Baal. And its enlargement and decoration to Ninus.
Ninus. Mm-hmm.
Teacher,
Yes, Wilfred.
I can't rightly make head nor tail of any of this stuff. Really, I can't. What's the good of reading about Babylon, wherever that is? Why don't we read about something we know? I mean about Orangeville, for that matter. Or how to make maple sugar, or play a shinny game. No, I mean it. Why don't we?
Why don't we? Well, we read this because it's in the reader. Turn to the very front page of your reader, Wilfred,
Yes, ma'am.
and let me read what it says there. entered according to Act of the Provincial Legislature in the year 1867 by the Reverend Edgerton Ryerson, LLD, Chief Superintendent of Education for Ontario. Does that answer your question, Wilfred?
Well...
We read it because men who are much wiser than we have prescribed it as our reading. Now then, will you please go on?
Yes, ma'am. To Ninus or his wife Semiramis, or according
No wonder
to
Wilfred
another
has trouble with that lesson. In the first place, the
tradition.
print in this thick red reader, brand new that year, is so small he can scarcely see it. And then some of the stories are really Greek to him, but he will fight his way through it. And now the teacher has moved over to grade 4.
Now, who can recite the poem we had last day? Hands up, please.
Miss, I know it.
Please, don't snap. All right, Arabella, you come up to the front, recite for us, please.
Yes, Miss Evans. Excelsior. The shades of night were falling fast, as through an alpine village passed a youth, who bore amid snow and ice a banner with the strange device, Excelsior. His brow was sad, his eye beneath flashed like a falchion from its sheath, and like a silver clarion rung the accents of that unknown tongue, Excelsior. In happy homes he saw the light.
That was a favorite poem recited with dramatic gestures. In fact, children did little else in those schools but recite and figure mathematical problems. History was recited.
Simcoe gave to the River Thames this name, and selected on it a site for a town, which he called London, intending this to be the future capital. As he was not satisfied with the frontier position of Newark, Dorchester then interfered, and wished to secure this advantage for Kingston. As a sort of compromise, the seat of government was ultimately fixed at York.
Grammar was recited, and the arithmetic was tough.
In what time ought 10 men to perform the same work which 5 men and 5 boys can perform in 15 days? It being given that 3 men can perform the same amount of work as 5 boys.
But of course it wasn't all work. There was recess. Shinny was the game for the boys, played on skates on the ice, of which there was plenty, with curved clubs cut from a willow tree and a hard rubber ball. No pads, and plenty of bruised shins.
Ouch! Oh, I'll get you for that, Gordon McTavish. Just wait and see if I don't. Just you wait and see.
And after school, the boys and girls, large and small, trudge home through the dark winter evening, along the winding trails through the bush. 1, 2, 3 miles to their farm homes where they'll help with the chores, milking cows, feeding pigs, gathering eggs, splitting firewood, making butter, lugging out ashes. Busy times for boys and girls. And let's leave them there as we come back to 1967. Well, schools today are considerably different from those tiny one-room buildings of 100 years ago. They're bigger, better lighted, better heated, well-ventilated. Teachers are better trained, more subjects are taught. The schools need to be different to prepare citizens for this complex modern world. But what if 100 years from now, the year 2067, when Canada is having its 200th birthday. What kind of schools will they have then? What kind of world? Of course, we can only guess, can't we? But let's give it a try. Let's get into our time machine and go 100 years into the future. Are you ready? Away we go. Now we'll see what we will see. What's this? Where there was a field with elm and maple trees, there is nothing but buildings. Strange buildings, dome-shaped, made of some kind of plastic. No windows, and strange-looking tower things, like smokestacks, but no smoke. And where are the children? There are some over there in that enclosure. Hey, some of them are playing ball and skipping and shoving each other. And there's a girl, just stole a boy's cap. Well, kids haven't changed much anyway. But I still don't see their school. A siren? And the children are all running in the same direction. Let's follow them. They're going toward that door. It's an elevator, the biggest I've ever seen. We're going down. Of course, the school is underground. There isn't enough space for everybody on the surface of the earth, and so they are living and working, going to school inside the earth. And those high towers in the buildings are ventilator shafts. Now the children are going into a big room. Say, it's something, large and well lighted. No windows, of course, but beautiful scenes in the walls. And the air is pure and fresh, the heating perfect. And the equipment, well, it's a far cry from the old bare schoolroom of 1867, I can tell you. No desks at all. Long tables with all manner of electronic equipment. Electric typewriters, tape recorders, radio sets with individual earphones. A small television screen for each student, computers to do the most complicated mathematical problems in seconds. But one thing hasn't changed much. Students still have to think about what's going on in the world. I wonder what is going on in the year 2067. There's the teacher, Professor Evans.
Now, boys and girls, we'll begin our lessons with a discussion of current events. This is a most important day.
Oh, Miss!
Don't snap. Don't snap, please. Yes, Harry?
It's World Election Day.
Correct. This is the day when people all over the world will be voting to determine the world's government for the next 5 years.
Miss!
Jean? Yes?
And they're voting whether or not to let the colony on Pluto become a full member of the solar community.
Yes, that's right. A most important decision. Now, as you know, Pluto was colonized only 25 years ago, and the people there are now requesting that they be admitted to the universal government. It's hoped that everybody will stay home today and vote. Yes, Wilfred?
I was scanning some videotape in the library last activity period, and I came across this thing about how they used to have elections 100 years ago.
That should be very interesting. Tell us about it.
Well, in the first place, only people over 21 could vote.
Yes, I know it seems odd to us now, when everyone over the age of 12 can vote, but in those days people weren't as well informed as they are now, and it was thought that only older people should be able to vote. Now, what else did you learn?
Well, everybody didn't have a voting machine in their own home the way we do now. They went out to places called polls.
I never heard of this.
Yeah, and it took them half a day to figure out who had won the election.
That's correct. Now, because every home voting machine activates a central computer, we know the results immediately. Besides, 100 years ago, there was no world government. Each country had its own government, and that was all.
But, teacher, how did they rule the world? I mean, make decisions and settle problems.
I know.
Yes, Harry?
They fought. That's right. They had wars and killed each other.
How could they solve any problems that way? I mean, by killing each other.
They didn't, I'm afraid. Only made bigger problems. But all that's ancient history. Let's go on to something more pleasant. What else is in the news today?
Oh, Miss!
Miss!
Yes, Wilfred?
I have something.
The World Hockey Team lost to Mars in the Universal Hockey League.
Not again.
They're talking about expanding the league again to let in some of the newer planets.
Now, who was it that was preparing a thesis on the history of hockey?
I was, teacher.
Oh, what did you learn, Harry?
Well, it seems hard to believe, but 100 years ago, there used to be hockey on great sheets of ice. And they had such weird-sounding names. Well, there was Toe, and Punch, and Boom Boom.
Are you finished your research?
No, I'm only as far as the pocket rocket. And some strange guy that people in those days used to sing about.
You sang about a hockey player?
That's right, a player called Shaq. If you didn't clear the track, he'd give you a whack.
Well, it's certainly interesting to study the quaint customs of ancient civilizations. And now it's time for our geography lesson. Today we shall visit India. Get ready, please.
Oh, that.
We'll go into the transportation room.
India, good. I'll see my friend Ashwood.
Oh, boy, I can't wait to see India.
Visit India. When your teacher says that now, she means visit India through a book, or a movie, or a television show. But in 100 years, a whole class will probably travel to India in, say, half an hour, by some means that we haven't even thought of yet. And they'll travel the roads, see the rivers, visit with the people. Language? Probably in 100 years, everyone in the world will speak the same language. And then back to the schoolroom again.
And now for our history lesson. Because this is the year of Canada's 200th birthday, we're going to see and hear some of the events of 1967. That year, they had what was called a World's Fair in Montreal. And here's the videotape of the opening of the fair. Turn down the lights, please. Those islands, you see, were in the St. Lawrence River. You can see the old Jacques Cartier Bridge in the background. Oh, it's gone now, of course. And look at the quaint old buildings. Oh, you'll notice there was no dome over the city then. That building there is Place Ville-Marie. Now, it's hard to realize now, but it was quite famous in its day. The tallest building in Canada. Oh, you remember that there was some controversy recently about whether it should be torn down. But it had to go to make room for modern buildings. Notice the old-fashioned ships in the river? And look, there's an aircraft flying overhead. That was the latest thing in transportation then. There were very few cargo rockets in those days. In fact, I don't think there were any. And here we are in the grounds of the fair now. This was considered a very big crowd then. Now remember, there were only 20 million people in the whole of Canada in 1967. Just about half the number that are in Ontario today.
Ouch!
Turn off the machine and turn up the lights, please. Now then, Arabella, what seems to be your problem?
Nothing, teacher.
Did you just scream?
Yes, but
It was my fault, teacher. I pulled her braids.
You did. Well, I've warned you about that, and I'm afraid as punishment you will have to miss our picnic in the Vacation Galaxy. And speaking of our picnic, Wilfred, did you check on the kind of weather that Control has scheduled for next Friday?
Yes, I did, teacher. All the holiday planets are going to be warm and sunny with light breezes.
Oh, good. That's the day for our picnic, then. And remember, the Stratojet leaves at 8 sharp. Yes, Jean, what is it?
Well, I was wondering, what did people do before they were able to control the weather? I mean, if they wanted to go for a picnic.
Well, I suppose they just took the chances. If it rained, it would spoil the picnic. Oh, our way is much better, of course. The scientists plan the weather a year in advance, providing the right amount of rain at the best times for the different crops. And now it's time for our literature lesson. Those of you studying Shakespeare, tune your receivers to the British Instruction Centre in London, where there's a production of As You Like It. Those who are studying the novel, tune to Paris, where there is a discussion of early French writers. And those who are studying humor, tune to Couchiching, where there are some special Leacock readings.
The classroom becomes international, with students around the world sitting in on lectures by experts in every field. Without leaving his local classroom, he can learn at MIT, Harvard, Yale, or Oxford. School libraries will contain videotape recordings as well as books. A student interested in space travel will be able to see and hear the earliest launchings exactly as they occurred.
T-minus 25. T-minus 20. We have the sequencer in. There was a brief hold at 18. Now it's T-minus 15 seconds and counting. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Holding momentarily at 4. Have ignition. We have a liftoff.
And when the noon buzzer goes, 5 minutes for lunch. After all, food will be in pill form, and it doesn't take long to swallow a few pills. And because doctors will be able to implant new parts in the human body, scenes like this one may be possible.
Harry, I must congratulate you on your splendid progress in mathematics.
Thank you, teacher.
The improvement's remarkable. Have you been getting extra help from your parents? Or are you just studying harder?
As a matter of fact, teacher, I just had the doctor put in a new brain. That old one gave me nothing but trouble.
Perhaps that's the way it'll be. Or we may hear an excuse for absenteeism that will go something like this.
Jean, why were you absent yesterday?
It was the traffic, Professor.
Traffic?
Well, yes, you see, Father got this new spacecraft, the Super Astro 24, and he decided to take us to Mars for the long weekend. You know, World Peace Day.
Yes, I know all about World Peace Day. If you remember, we had a pageant celebrating the formal signing of the Disarmament Agreement of 1995 that put an end to all wars. You were in it.
Yes, Professor.
And what has that to do with your being absent?
Well, on the way back from Mars, we ran into this space traffic jam. Honestly, I never saw so many space vehicles in all my life. Just thousands of miles of them.
Yes, go on.
Well, it became impossible to move, so when Daddy got as far as the moon, he decided we'd spend the night there. He was terribly tired. Oh, and we stayed at that new Moonglow Motel. You know, the one inside the moon?
I've never heard of it.
Professor, you wouldn't believe it. Moving pictures in every room, swimming pools, and the most gorgeous...
Yes. Well, I guess we can excuse you this time, Jean.
Oh, thank you, Professor.
Provided
Provided?
that you prepare a videotape about Mars to show to the class. You might call it, let me see. Oh, yes, what I did on my holiday. Now, remember, some of your classmates haven't been to Mars yet. This will give them a chance to see it.
Yes, Professor Evans.
Is that the way it will be? Who knows? Guidance? Computers should be a big help here. Just program the information. Here's Harry.
Let me see. I like arithmetic, so I'll push this button. And I'm good at spelling, so I'll push this one. My father is a veterinarian. His father was a preacher. My mother's father was a farmer. I had a great-great-uncle who was a horse thief. Oh, no. Better leave him out of this. Push the buttons. I like hunting, and hockey, and swimming, and animals. Push these buttons. I'm 12 years old, blue eyes, 5'3.5 inches tall, 100 pounds. My average last month was 73. Push these buttons. Now for the result. My whole future depends on this. Well, let her go. And here it is. Hey, how about that? I'm cut out to be a jockey.
Well, I suppose machines can make mistakes too. So, learning machines, mechanical textbooks, computers, closed-circuit television, electronic tape, microfilm. They will probably all play a part in the education of 2067. But there is no doubt at all that there is one complex computer that will still be the most important learning factor, and that is the human brain. And perhaps, from time to time, boys and girls may still get a chance to recite, with appropriate gestures, some of the old poems.
How they brought the good news. I sprang to the stirrup, and Joris and he. I galloped, Dirk galloped, we galloped all three. Good speed, cried the watch, as the gate bolts undrew. Speed, echoed the wall to us galloping through. Behind shut the postern, the lights sank to rest, and into the midnight we galloped abreast. Not a word to each other, we kept a great pace. Neck by neck, stride by stride, never changing our place. I turned in my saddle and made a curse. And
short.